recap that. Who owns the media in our country mainly? Who owns the media in our country? What, Joey? Disney. Viacom. Corporations. People's, and their goal is to make money. So if their goal is to make money, that means the bias that they possess is entirely founded upon getting people to watch, listen, click, read, visit the website, whatever the case may be. That is what they're trying to do. So let's recap these. I'm going to go ahead. So I want all eyes up without you looking at them. If I were to say that the national news will not let our local stations cover anything because they don't think it's important, what role then would I say the national news is taking on? Charles? Gatekeeper. And if they were to say something about the scandals that are going on in the governor's mansion related to how much money they're wasting in bribes and corruption, what would that role be? Watchdog. And then the last one, where they present it like who's in the lead, who's behind, the popularity contest. Now you're looking at the scorekeeper. Okay, so we are going into the rules of the media because there is something that protects our media. You said it yesterday. What protects the media in our country? What part of the Constitution? The First Amendment. The First Amendment protects our media, but there are some rules. And these are things that I've referenced, but just kind of going back through them. First, the equal time rule. If Donald Trump gets an advertisement opportunity, who else had to be given that same opportunity? Clinton. Same time, same amount, same cost. That is equal time. It has to have an equal time opportunity for that. Then the other ones get a little bit more, I guess, practical on local levels. We'll start with this one, political editorializing rule. That is if an editor of a magazine, a news network, whatever, endorses somebody. The editor endorses somebody politically. The opponent has the opportunity to respond. So let's say USA Today comes out with support of Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton would have been able to go to USA Today and say, wait a minute, I'm going to write a response in the newspaper and I want you to publish it. They have that ability because it allows to see both sides. It's not like everybody can just pick somebody and then the opponent has no other option. They are forced to then have the opportunity to go. The right of reply is similar, but a little bit different. This is during a show that is not a news broadcast, nothing to do with editorials, whatever. During a show, just a regular show, somebody starts blasting a candidate, an official, whatever. They have the opportunity to go on and respond. So that is not like Rush. It's not like it's something with Glenn Beck or even Howard Stern or something like that. During the I don't know which one it was. Was it the AMAs the other night? The music award show. Anybody watch it? Was it the AMAs? At 8 o'clock? Okay. I only watched it because my wife DVRs it and then she puts the performances on. Anyway, Green Day was on, and Green Day, it was like, They kept saying, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was a very much, they had a chorus. There was a song, and then in the middle they had a very anti-Trump message. And it was very clear, literal. It was like, what is it? And it might have been, I'm not sure, but it might have been, but it was like, no Trump USA. I mean, it was very clear. It wasn't like it was a hidden message. If they wanted, Trump could then go on and respond, and I don't know if it was MTV or whatever. That's not a regular broadcast, and they were attacked. So he would have the opportunity to at least respond. Is there any reason to? Probably not. So you wouldn't have to do that. The fairness doctrine, okay, the fairness doctrine is not anymore. What it would require you to do is if you had a TV show and you wanted to talk about how you were very against Obamacare, you would be required to talk about why people like Obamacare. Now, in a lot of ways, is that a good thing for most issues to talk about both sides? Sure, but I'm not saying like the fairness doctrine in terms of recognizing the other side. This is you have to be fair to both sides. And that went away pretty quickly. Forcing somebody to do something about an issue they care about, that would be a violation of the First Amendment. And now we do have a lot more controversial shows that kind of push that. So looking at the First Amendment, who does the Constitution apply to?
Every American citizen.
Not every American citizen. Nope. Who does the Constitution apply to? Nope. Nobody has said it yet. Noah? The government. The government. I didn't hear you. The government, meaning the government can't punish you for what you print. Sort of. The First Amendment sort of allows that. There are a few rules, okay, for what they might not be able to do. Number one, if I have a newspaper, you can't post lies about somebody trying to ruin their life. Now, if you are a politician, you're a public figure. If you're a celebrity, you're a public figure. As much as you don't like it, you are in the public's eye. So their lies, maybe not all the time lies, just a little bit of exaggerations. A lie would be something where it is clearly not rooted in fact, and the whole purpose is to ruin your reputation. So if somebody were to come out and start talking about Michael Jordan, how Michael Jordan has a basement where he has dog cages that he keeps little children, and put it in the New York Times, that would be defamation because the whole purpose would be ruining his reputation. So then you can be punished for it. That's the key that you need to think about. It's not that that New York Times article can be stopped. That would be prior restraint. But the New York Times can be punished for it. And that's how our press works. If you do one of these small rules, that break one of those small rules, you can be punished afterwards. And that is related to TV also. So they typically will not stop you before it comes out, but they can punish you. And that's where these guys come in. The FCC. So, what does the FCC regulate? I mean, you probably see stuff all the time when you're looking at different things you're into. What does the FCC regulate? Communications. The Federal Communications Commission. It's a government agency. They're in charge of TV, radio. That's their job. They regulate it. So what do they regulate? How do they regulate it? What do they make sure doesn't happen or does happen?
People without licenses can't operate broadcasts.
So I couldn't just open up a radio station just because I wanted to.
Do they do like censorship stuff on?
And they deal with censorship. Thank you to the Super Bowl. What happens now if you watch any live broadcast? Any live broadcast, Paul?
Doesn't have like a certain amount of delay on it.
Has a 10-second delay. So if you watch an award show, a sporting event, and let's say the buzzer goes off, end of the quarter, that actually happened 10 seconds ago. Because there's somebody in a van or in a booth, whatever, who is watching it and listening. So if somebody flips off the camera, or if somebody you can hear in the background drop an F-bomb or something like that, they can hit a button, and when it actually gets broadcasted out, that's on a different camera, or they mute the sound or something.
So basically, whatever you see happen 10 seconds ago.
Yeah, whatever you see on a live show happened 10 seconds ago. And it's really interesting if you ever get a chance to be somewhere, and it's usually sporting events, it usually is, watch. I just remember this from college. I was watching a game on TV in my dorm because we had to do something, so I missed the football game. And somebody ran back a kickoff for a touchdown. And I remember watching, and my dorm was probably a mile away, and I heard the cheers before I saw him catch the ball. And so I knew something good happened. It was pretty cool. But it was that far away, and you pay attention to it. The next time you're maybe at a restaurant or something and you're nearby, like Spartan Stadium or something, if the game's on, just watch and see if you can notice sometimes when you hear cheers and if it's behind. But they broadcast media. That's what they control, broadcast media. They don't control newspapers. It's TV and it's radio. That means that if I wanted to start a newspaper, do I need a license? No, I just need a lot of paper and a printer.
So nobody regulates newspapers?
Nobody regulates newspapers from a licensing standpoint. Okay, they might regulate them from a, like I said, if it's like purely trying to hurt someone's reputation, I can be punished for it, but I don't have to get approval to do it. If I want to start a TV show, a TV station, I have to get approval. I have to get a license for that. But otherwise, no, I don't. So the FCC, I think comes up a lot. Howard Stern, what does he do? What is his job?
Looking good.
You guys know Howard Stern? He's a radio show host. He's a shock jock.
He used to be.
He talks about the worst things you could possibly think of. He is a crude human being. He says awful things. He gets awful people to come on there. He does a lot of nasty things. And it's regulated from a standpoint of when and who can it be broadcasted to. Think about our cable television. It's getting worse and worse and worse with language. Comedy Central, you can hear F-bombs every once in a while. Nudity every once in a while. FX, American Horror Story, there's nudity every once in a while. Like, I'm talking like rear ends and stuff. But exactly. Yep, there you go. But it's all regulated by the FCC. So it kind of continues to evolve because now we have the internet. How does Netflix get in? Well, it's a subscription service. So is cable. So there are some new pieces to it, but just some general ideas here with what has changed. What happens whenever you watch a show at the very beginning, and it's on all networks actually. I'm talking the bought ones too, like Showtime and HBO. At the very beginning of an episode, what do you see? The ratings. The ratings and why. This episode is rated TVMA for the following. That's because of the FCC. They are required to tell you what it's about. And who is that really for? Parents. There you go. It's for parents. It's for parents to know what's on and what can they do about it. All right, so now we're moving on quickly to how it really impacts the government a little bit more. So to begin, who gets the most exposure? Well, we only have one of them, the president. The president is the person who gets followed the most, which means the media, the websites, the newspapers, Good Morning America, are they going to talk about the senator from Wyoming that much on Good Morning America? Not unless they do what? Something really stupid. So,
wasn't it like the Toronto mayor was smoking crack or something?
Yeah, parties with like prostitutes and stuff. Yeah, they got talked about. Yes, probably. But there's a representative from out west who was doing there's a in the airport sexual ring going on in bathrooms. That was a big story. Otherwise, we don't hear about that stuff. We don't hear about those representatives, unless it's a scandal, we don't hear about it. The president, though, is followed by everyone. Guys up here. Is followed by everyone. They have journalists that sole job is to follow the president. The White House press corps. They follow the president. And the Senate and the House want that exposure. So why do senators and representatives still want to be talked about by the media? Get their name out. It's free publicity, especially in July, August, September, October of an election year. They want the same publicity. They want to look like they're doing stuff for the people they represent, their constituents. They want to represent those people and their wishes. And in order to do that, they have to be covered. So how do they get covered then? Well, right here. What does this picture represent, Jake? It's a leak. It's a leak. So that means somebody gives information that wasn't supposed to be public to a writer, reporter, journalist, whatever. For what purpose? Think about what a leak would be. Money? Is there a good thing though? Like if I'm a senator, could I benefit from a leak? Noah? Boosts you, discredits your opponent, absolutely. But there has to be something, like what is it that they're trying to gain? You know, like those insider stories, the journalist looks like they're the first one to it. And a lot of it is favors. So, okay, I'll give you this leak. You look like the hero. You look like the amazing journalist. You can go get your Pulitzer Prize. But I'm going to need you in 2 months because I'm up in a tight battle in my re-election bid. You need to write a pretty nice story about me for my people. So I'll give you this leak, but in 2 months, if you don't do this, I'm going to ruin your life. And those are the relationships that mainly Senate and House members have to have with the media. If you upset the media, and Donald Trump's in a little bit different position right now, but as a senator or a rep, if you upset the media, it is very hard for you to maintain your job. They need you just as much as you need them. They need stories to write about you, but you need them to write stories that make you look good. And this, you know, like the leaks, there was a really interesting one that came up this weekend, and I thought there was a really great point in this with it. This probably, a lot of you probably don't know. Texas football, the University of Texas fired their coach. The University of Houston's coach got announced to be their head coach immediately after their last football game. Okay? And ESPN was reporting it in the morning. And there was a guy on SportsCenter who said, this is ridiculous. You tell me why there's somebody in Texas's athletic department that thought it was necessary to leak this story to SportsCenter, ABC, Sports Illustrated, whatever. What did they have to gain by doing this? Because they had to gain something. They just ruined all of the Texas seniors' last chance to play a college football game, probably college football, anything. All of the Houston seniors. What did that leak have to gain? And that means there had to have been something for them to gain. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. So what did they have to gain in doing that? So something to think about there and why it happens. Leaks are more from Congress than the president for obvious reasons that we just talked about. So the campaigns, we're able to kind of get through quickly just because we've talked about it so much, and it has been a little bit more obvious, I guess. But we need the free coverage. And we talked about that a lot with Donald Trump. The Twitter, the Facebook, the news stories. You get support, you get following just because your name is out, and that's really what you have. But at the same time, both campaigns did a pretty good job at that one, the spin doctor. What does that mean if you add spin to something? What do you think that means? You take a story and what do you do with it? You give it a different meaning. You maybe don't address a part of it and you make it look better for you. That is spin, and that's what Hillary's team and Donald's team did the entire time, is they tried to spin stories, make it look like something it wasn't, or highlight something and ignore a little bit more. They are responsible for making them look better than the article or information, whatever, could portray them as. And that's where debates come in, spinning things with the debates. And then lastly now, with the bully pulpit. What is the bully pulpit? This would be like a U.S. history thing. You guys probably haven't talked about it yet in AP, because I doubt you're to that era yet. But what that means is President Obama, President Bush, and it will be President Trump also. They use their role, and it's not like bully like you would think, but they use their podium to directly influence both government and officials. So they kind of get people to get there. Okay, so now that bias thing that we talked about. Is the media biased? Is the media biased? Yes. Not as much as most people say, though. It is biased, and the things that are more biased than anything are the websites. You know, like Huffington Post, Slate. The networks are not as biased as you would think, because of the fact that it's difficult to put spin on the regular everyday stories. You know, like the roll call votes in the Senate, in the House. I mean, how much spin can you put on that? The most spin comes from what? What is their goal? What is any network's goal? Make money. That's where the bias really is. But right here, the liberal side, journalists tend to be more liberal than the average citizen. So when they have an opportunity to insert their slant, it does tend to be a little bit more liberal than conservative. A lot of the conservative slants come from more specific, fewer sources, fewer places, which would be Fox News. That's where the conservative side might end up being. Okay, so now we look at the way, and this is a little bit of what your article was on, with the adversarial press. What does an adversary mean? What's the best way to describe that? Opponent. So, in other words, the press, while you need the press if you're a politician and they need you, they really are not friends. They're there to expose you if you do something wrong. The watchdog. They're there to hold you accountable. The watchdog. That is more of a national political part of the media. And I do think it's important for you to remember that when we're talking about the media, a lot of times you might kind of think of the soft news stuff that we were looking at earlier. This is the level where it's the relationship between the media and the politicians. So they're after the awards. So when you hear growing up about Watergate, the Clinton scandal the Clinton scandal got released on Drudge Report, which is a conservative website. That's where that scandal got broken. People want to do that, meaning they want to be a journalist who goes and gets the next Watergate. So they try to seek things out. And unfortunately now, what does that do to people who are reporters on, let's say, CNN or Huffington Post or Drudge Report? What do they do with the information they get? Often way, way too quickly. They publish it, they sell it before they get the backup that they need. So that's where the misinformation comes from. It's not always absolute, because they have this big push to just jump on it and get the big story that they think is going to push their own agenda and push kind of their own careers. All right, last little bit here. We're almost done. So what can the government do? Stay ahead of the game. Anticipate it. Make yourself look good. So in other words, that whole piece of, all right, I'll give you this leak, and then in a little bit, you need to make me look good. Oftentimes that comes from canned news. Meaning, all right, talk to my staffer. They're going to give you something, and they're going to tell you exactly what this story is supposed to look like. Before you publish it in the newspaper, I want to read it, and then I'll give you my approval to publish it. Canned news. And in doing so, think about what that journalist has to gain. If they work for, let's say, the Washington Post, they can continue to get insider stories then. If all of a sudden they say, no, I already got my story, I can get a leak from anybody else. Then the next time they need to have a sweet story, because maybe they've been ignored by their boss or the editors or whatever. People are just not listening to them when they want to put an article in the newspaper. They don't have anybody to go to. So that relationship is pretty smart and necessary. And that's where the leaks tend to go to, the insider stories. Now, what you'll get to towards the end of the chapter is the background, where the sources. Where did the sources come from? So, who has finished that part? Anybody finish that part with the sources? Still on terms, probably. So, on background, on deep background, off the record, on the record. If you're on the record talking to a journalist because you are the amazing Damien, and you're on the record, I'm a journalist, what can I do with anything you say to me? Thanks, Damien. You can publish it. You're on the record. What if you were to say, all right, this is off the record, though? Permission, there we go. And if I were to publish it then? Yeah, you could lash out at me. You could respond, potentially sue me, depending on what it was. And that is off the record then. So the off the record stuff, you would have to be pretty trusting of the journalist to do it, but it still maintains the relationship. And that's where the on deep background comes from. So maybe Damien says, look, I'm off the record here. You can't use this, but you can credit me by saying I have a source in the Capitol who says they're going to vote tomorrow on this bill and it's going to be shot down. You can put me on that as your deep background source or on background source. Or they could say, I have a source that says this, not talking about somebody on the Capitol. That is more on the deeper background. So the different levels of how they get their stories and how they're reported is where that relationship is important. That's probably one of the biggest things for us is the relationship between the media and the government. And while it's supposed to connect us to them, at the same time, it's a lot of the personal careers that are pursued and how they go from there. All right, this is it. Last thing. Talked about the White House press corps. Their job is to follow the president. I mean, they show up probably at 7:30 in the morning, and they're in the White House. There's a room for probably, let's start with just USA Today, Washington Post, Washington Standard, New York Post, probably Wall Street Journal, that they have an office. They have probably a break room, everything in the White House, and they get to go in and out and write articles about what is happening in the White House. That is their job. They follow the president. They stay at the White House all day to do it. So maintaining that relationship is also important. So if you were to upset the president, think about how many press conferences they have, type thing. Let's say there are 15 of them. You upset the president. When they ask questions, okay, any questions for the press? You're never going to get called on. I mean, they get to choose who they talk to. So that, again, relationship is important. So maintaining the positive side of the president. Yeah.
What kind of relationship do these journalists and the Secret Service have? Because the Secret Service is protecting the president and the White House.
I would say it'd probably come more through the press secretary. So the press secretary is responsible. It's kind of like Josh Earnest right now. It was Jake Carney. Josh Earnest is responsible for making President Obama look good. Every day, making President Obama look good. And to do that, they have to talk to the press corps pretty regularly. A lot of times, President Obama is going to be out of the White House. These people will still be there. And the whole time, they're still trying to make them look good. So what they do is develop relationships with them. The Secret Service probably is not even a part of where they get to. So, right. They're probably aware of it. Different rules, any concerns, they probably go through the press secretary and then kind of, go from there. But again, their whole goal is to make the president look good. If there's something positive, they're going to publicize it. If there's something negative, they're going to spin it. And if you upset them, you might still be able to work in the White House, but you're never going to be able to get any access time, never going to be able to get to ask a question or anything of that nature. So, questions